My name is Rachael Holloman. I am the director of the Office of Federal Grant Programs in Suicide Prevention for the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. And first, let me say I am so honored to be speaking to you today. It's definitely an honor and a pleasure. That being said, I'm going to talk to you today about suicide prevention in the state of Georgia. But more importantly, I'm going to talk to you today about suicide prevention among the women in the state of Georgia and what that looks like for us as women, and not only what it looks like data-wise, but then what we can do to help and how we can support each other and support other women in this goal to reduce suicide in the state of Georgia. So I'm going to start with some data. So when we pull our data, one thing we realized is that the suicide rates among females have remained moderately consistent in Georgia over the past 5 years of the available data. However, if we go back 10 years, if we look at 2013 to 2022, we realize that the suicide rate among females in Georgia has actually increased during that time, which is something that we want to make sure that we're aware of. We want to make sure that it's something that we talk about, and we want to make sure that it's something that we work to prevent and address, because any rise in suicide in the state of Georgia is something that is concerning for us, but particularly among women. So often in suicide prevention, you hear us talk about males and you hear us talk about youth, because those are two very big demographics of concern, not only in the state of Georgia, but nationwide. But as we talk about suicide in females, we definitely want to make sure that we are keeping our finger on this and taking care of this for the women in the state of Georgia. When we look at rates in the state of Georgia, as I said before, rates in males are typically 3 to 4 times higher than in females. What we do find in Georgia is very similar to the traditional, what we call gender paradox, which is what we see nationwide as well, is that more often men die by suicide than women, but women actually report thoughts of suicide more often and actually make more non-fatal suicide attempts. We also look at suicide deaths among females and what that looks like in regards to maybe their known circumstances. So if we know what was going on in a female's life prior to her death by suicide, one thing we go back in and look at is, what do we think may have contributed to that? Unfortunately, data shows us that mental health issues among women are the highest contributor to surrounding their suicide death. Also, any history of expressed suicidal thoughts, or maybe even a past attempt. And then there's several other things that play into this as well when we look at our data in Georgia among our females. Maybe they left a suicide note. Maybe they had an intimate partner relationship problem, life stressors, physical health, some sort of altercation. So all of these can contribute to the circumstances surrounding a woman's death by suicide in the state of Georgia. We also look at how someone may choose to attempt or die by suicide in the state of Georgia. And we do this across all demographics, age, race, gender, you name it, we look at it. And so when we looked at compared our males and females, we know that firearms are the number one lethal mean used for death by suicide in the state of Georgia. And then it goes to hanging, strangulation, suffocation, all those kind of get piled into one, poisoning, and then some, which is typically what we would commonly refer to as intentional overdose, as well as other. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, up until recently, women in Georgia and women nationwide typically did not die by suicide in regards to a firearm. This is new data that is coming forward to us, that more and more women are now choosing firearms as a mean of death instead of typically what has been poisoning or hanging or strangulation, which is definitely a concern for us. It's definitely something that you will see us moving forward addressing more when we talk about lethal means in Georgia and what that looks like for our women. And it's just something to be made aware of. It's a change in history, a change in trend for us. And so it's definitely something that we want to be aware of and take into consideration. So why is it important for us to talk about this as women? Why am I here today talking to you about suicide prevention and what that looks like and this very deep, heavy conversation? And I'm talking to you about it because we have to talk about it. If we want to change the culture, if we want to change the stigma, if we want to change how suicide and suicide prevention works in the state of Georgia, we have to have these hard conversations. You know, the number one myth in suicide prevention is that if you ask someone if they are thinking about suicide, or you talk to someone about their thoughts about suicide, then you are automatically putting that thought in their head, and now they are more likely to die by suicide than they would have been previously. That is 100% false. If you get nothing else out of what I'm telling you today, please, 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 please know that all our data, all our research, all our studies show that if you talk to someone about suicide, if you ask the question if they're thinking about suicide, if you ask the question if they're thinking about dying by suicide, every single piece of literature that we have says that that actually reduces the likelihood that that person will die by suicide. And one thing I often get asked is why? Why do you think that talking about it actually makes it better? And the number one reason is it gives somebody hope. It lets somebody know that you care about them, that you care enough to have the hard conversations with them. And I would tell you that this doesn't just apply to women. This also applies to our children and to males, to our friends, to our family, you name it. It applies across all races, all genders, all nationalities. It's very, very important that we have these conversations. Now, that being said, you don't have to have all the answers. When you ask someone if they're thinking about suicide, if you're talking to someone about suicide, you don't have to have the answers. What you have to do is be willing to listen and take the time with them that they need. You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about in suicide prevention is connecting someone to resources. The slide that I've put up now is actually our website slide. We have an entire website devoted to preventing suicide in the state of Georgia. We wanted it to be very easy to find, to be very specific, where you weren't going to have to search a whole bunch of stuff. We could put all the resources that we needed in this one particular website, and you could go there and you could get it. The website is preventsuicidega.org. This is where we as the department put everything we have. We put all our resources out. We put all our data out. We put how to connect you to survivors of support, loss groups, materials that you might need to help you or a loved one. We have 988 on our website. If you're not familiar with 988, 988 is the suicide prevention and crisis hotline in the state of Georgia. It's also nationwide, but particularly in the state of Georgia. And what someone can do is that they can call 988 at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can call whether they're in a crisis or not in a crisis. Maybe someone just needs to get connected to services, but they don't know where to start. Then you're going to call 988. Maybe someone's having a mental health or a substance use crisis and they need immediate help. You're going to call 988. We are so excited about the fact that we have this resource in this and what that looks like for the mental health world as we move forward. This is the biggest mental health transformation to come along in my lifetime, probably in most of your lifetimes, even probably in my children's lifetime, to have something that is being fashioned very closely in connection with 911 for individuals in the state of Georgia and who have mental health needs and substance use needs is such a big deal and such groundbreaking work. And we're very proud of that at the department and within the state of Georgia to be leading the way in some of those initiatives. We have an amazing 988 team that works extremely hard on this rollout as it is continuing to come not only across the state of Georgia, but nationwide. So if, again, I actually want you to take two things away from today. One is that you can talk about suicide and you're not going to increase somebody's risk, that it's more important to talk about it because that's actually the way you're going to reduce somebody's risk. But the second is I want you to know about 988. I want you to know that 988 is out there for you to call, for your friends to call, for your family to call, for your coworkers to call. Anybody and everybody in the state of Georgia can call and be connected to someone who specializes in mental health and substance use interventions, and who can help that person get connected to the services and the resources that they need, whether they are in a time of crisis or whether they just need someone to talk to. And so I definitely want you to take those 2 points away from what I'm telling you today. But I want to give you hope. I want to tell you what you can do to help. And what you can do to help is give someone hope, show someone you care. A couple of years ago, we actually did a campaign for suicide prevention in the state of Georgia. And part of the campaign was a social media campaign. And what it said was, blank is what suicide prevention is to me. And I remember that my team came to me and they're like, we need yours. Like, we've got to put yours. You're the director. We need to put your word up. What is your word? And I thought really, really hard. I have so many words about suicide prevention and what it means to me and why it's important to me. And I could obviously talk about it all day long, every day, in every situation, regardless of what company I'm in or age group I'm in. And when I sat down and thought about it, I came back with the word kindness. And the reason that I chose kindness is kindness doesn't cost us anything. It cost me nothing to make eye contact with someone in the grocery store, to smile, to ask someone how their day is, and truly sit and wait to see what their response is, not just say it in passing as I'm walking down the hall or out the door or down the grocery aisle. You know, we never know what someone else is going through. We never know, that person that we encounter may have something going on in the background that we're not aware of. And in that moment, we can make a choice. And I have always challenged people, as well as myself and my daughters. I have 2 teenage daughters. Well, one's an adult now, she's going off to college. But I've always challenged them to meet every person that they come in contact with kindness. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's quite hard, but you never know that kindness that you showed that person that day may be the difference in them choosing to stay here a little bit longer, or choosing to potentially attempt or do something that might harm themselves. And so kindness to me is suicide prevention. So my challenge to you today is not only to be kind to others, but be kind to yourself. We as women carry a huge burden. We are daughters and mothers and wives and business leaders and teachers and medical staff, nurses, doctors, whatever it may be. Like we often juggle a lot of hats, as I like to say. We have hats in the career, in the home, in the community, you name it, we as women carry it. And we are strong because not a lot of people could do what we women do, particularly in the state of Georgia. I think we're pretty good. Stop, as they like to say. P.S. I live on a farm, so sorry. But we have to be kind to ourselves. We're real easy to be kind to others, but we don't often give ourselves the same grace and kindness that we would give others. So I'm going to leave you with that today. I'm going to challenge you to be kind to others as a way of preventing suicide in the state of Georgia. I'm going to challenge you to have the hard conversations and continue to show others how much you care, even though they may not understand why you want to have these conversations sometime or want to do it. But I'm also going to ask you to share the resources, share the website, share 988. If you think that someone's possibly struggling, but you don't know why and they don't want to talk to you about it, or maybe you're not comfortable talking about it, just let them know that there are people out there who they can talk to, and that an easy way to reach that person is by calling 988. Thank you again for having me today. I enjoyed our brief time together, and I hope that I gave you some hope for the future.